Thanks to the folks who led the way. Thanks to the folks, let us thank them every day.
Today's inspirational live show is dedicated to Chief Standing Bear, who in the 1800s was one of the first Native American civil rights warriors. Not too long ago, a statue of Chief Standing Bear was installed in the Statutory Hall in the U.S. Capitol. There's not a lot of Native Americans that have been recognized this way. Chief Standing Bear was a tribal chief of the Ponca tribe who lived on the west bank of the Missouri River, which is now northeastern Nebraska. In the mid-1800s, the Ponca tribe tried to develop good relationships with the U.S. government, and they ended up turning over most of their land. They only kept about 58,000 acres for a reservation for themselves. For many years, the tribe struggled to survive by farming the barren land that was left to them. In 1868, the U.S. government created the Great Sioux Reservation, and the Ponca tribe lands were inside its borders. So the Ponca were supposed to leave what remained of their homeland and move to the Indian Territory in Oklahoma. They resisted, and Standing Bear, or tribal chief, protested the most. But in 1877, the government sent in federal troops to force the eviction. A third of the tribe succumbed on the journey, and most of the rest were either ill or disabled. In December 1878, Chief Standing Bear's 16-year-old son passed away, beginning a sequence of events that would eventually bring some justice to the tribe and to the Native Americans throughout the country. After Chief Standing Bear's son died, he was determined to return to his former home and bury his son in familiar grounds. He and a few of the tribe's remaining members started the 2-month trek back to their home in Nebraska in the middle of winter. At the time, Native Americans weren't allowed to leave their reservations, so Standing Bear's group were labeled renegades and were arrested by the Army, with the idea that they would eventually be returned to Indian Territory, where they, quote, belonged. A general named George Crook was sympathetic to Standing Bear and his followers, however, and Crook enlisted the aid of a newspaper journalist named Thomas Henry Tibbles on the tribe's behalf. Tibbles then secured the services of 2 prominent attorneys from Omaha to represent the tribe, all the while writing about the tribe's plight and invoking the sympathy of the American public. The lawyers claimed that Standing Bear's group couldn't be detained, saying that they were American citizens and entitled to legal rights. The government's response was that the Native Americans did not constitute, quote, persons under the law. Chief Standing Bear was making the case that Native Americans were American citizens and entitled to legal rights, and that he had the right to leave the reservation and move around freely. The U.S. government didn't think so, and they took him to court. And when his case got to court, and it only lasted 12 days, but in court, Standing Bear stated, "That hand is not the color of yours, but if I pierce it, I shall feel pain. If you pierce your hand, you also feel pain. The blood that will flow from mine will be the same color as yours. I am a man. The same God made us both." Most people thought that his words were a waste of breath. But in a landmark decision, Judge Elmer Dundy, despite comments about Native Americans being a, quote, weak, insignificant, and generally despised race, somehow ruled in favor of Standing Bear, declaring that he and his band of followers were, indeed, persons under the law, and as such were entitled to move around the country like any citizen. It was the first time that Native Americans had been legally declared to be people who had legitimate rights to all the freedoms guaranteed under the Constitution. The government appealed Dundy's decision, but it was upheld in the U.S. Supreme Court. Standing Bear was free to return to his home territory and bury his son. When Standing Bear himself died, he was also buried there. Well, Standing Bear truly had the will to fight for his rights, and that court decision was a major change for Native Americans. A lot of injustices still exist, and things have a long ways to go. But that was a major step, and this was in 1878. So if we can find the will, we can often find a way.
If there's a will, there is a way. If there's a will, there is a way. If there's a will,